June 30th, 1908, forever changed the history of humanity. An explosion in the Siberian taiga, equal in power to 1,000 atomic bombs, is officially explained as a meteorite fall. But what if the truth is completely different? What if the authorities of all countries have been hiding from us for more than a century? A discovery that could overturn our understanding of the world. Today we will reveal the greatest mystery of the 20th century and find out what really happened in the Podkamennaya Tunguska region. The truth about the Tunguska event may be even more shocking than we imagine. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new investigations into the most secret mysteries of history. What do you think about the extraterrestrial origin of the Tunguska catastrophe? Share your opinion in the comments. June 30th, 1908, 7:17 in the morning, local time. Over the uninhabited taiga of central Siberia, an event unfolds that will forever change our understanding of what is possible. A dazzling flash of light, brighter than the sun, cuts through the morning sky. It is followed by an explosion of monstrous power, equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT. The shock wave circles the globe twice. But this is only the beginning of the greatest mystery of the 20th century. A mystery that the authorities of various countries have been hiding from humanity for over 100 years. What really happened in the Podkamennaya Tunguska River region? Why are key documents still classified? And what role could secret experiments have played in this event? Semyon Semyonov, a resident of the Vanavara trading post, located 65 kilometers from the epicenter of the explosion, became one of the main witnesses to the disaster. His testimony, recorded many years later, is striking in its accuracy and detail. It was as if the sun had split in two, he told researchers. A fireball flew across the sky, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Then there was such a loud bang that I was temporarily deafened. But Semenov was not the only eyewitness. Testimonies came from settlements within a radius of 700 kilometers from the site of the explosion. People saw a pillar of fire rising up to the clouds. Some reported strange behavior in animals a few days before the disaster. Deer ran around in panic, dogs howled for no reason, and birds left their nests. Of particular interest are the testimonies of Chuchanchi and Chekarin, two Evenk brothers who were in the taiga at the time of the explosion. Their words, conveyed through an interpreter to ethnographer Inokenti Suslov, contain details that do not fit with the official meteorite version. A man of fire came down from the sky, they said. He was bigger than the forest and brighter than the sun. When he touched the ground, everything around him caught fire. Meteorological stations across Europe recorded unusual atmospheric disturbances. In Irkutsk, seismographs recorded an earthquake measuring up to 5 on the Richter scale. But the strangest thing began after the explosion. For several nights, the sky over Europe and Asia glowed so brightly that it was possible to read newspapers without additional lighting. This phenomenon was observed in London, Paris, and Berlin. Astronomers were puzzled. Where did such intense light come from? Official science explained it as dust particles in the atmosphere, but many researchers doubted this interpretation. The light was too unusual, silvery, shimmering, unlike anything known. The first attempts at scientific research began only 13 years after the event. Until then, only local residents and a few scientists who studied seismographic data knew about the Tunguska explosion. But even then, In the first days after the disaster, rumors began to circulate that it was not a meteorite. Old-timers told of strange people in military uniforms who appeared in the taiga a few weeks after the explosion. They conducted some kind of research, took soil and water samples, and interviewed local residents. Who they were and what they were looking for remains a mystery to this day. Documents about these expeditions, if they exist, are safely hidden in state archives. The Tunguska catastrophe could have remained a local event, known only to a handful of Siberian residents, had it not been for a combination of circumstances. The 1917 revolution, the Civil War, famine, and devastation pushed scientific research into the background. It was only in the early 1920s that young Soviet science turned its attention to the strange incident in the Siberian taiga. The first serious researcher was Leonid Alexeyevich Kulik, an enthusiastic scientist and meteorite specialist. In 1921, he came across a brief mention of a meteorite fall in the newspaper Sibirskaya Gizn. The article was short, but contained intriguing details. Kulik realized that this could be the discovery of the century. However, his first attempts to reach the site were unsuccessful. The taiga did not want to reveal its secrets. Swamps, mosquitoes, and the lack of roads turned the expedition into a real test of survival. But Kulik was persistent. He understood that studying such a large meteorite could yield invaluable scientific information. The first successful expedition took place in 1927. What Kulik saw struck his imagination. The devastated forest stretched for tens of kilometers. The trees lay like matchsticks, all strictly radial from the center of the explosion. But the strangest thing was that at the very epicenter, some trees remained standing, stripped of their branches and bark. This phenomenon was called the telegraph forest. The trunks stuck out of the ground like the masts of sunken ships. Physicists later explained this by the peculiarities of shockwave propagation, but local residents saw something mystical in it. The forest died, but did not fall, said the Evenks, avoiding this place. Kulik expected to find a crater and the remains of a meteorite, but there was no crater. Instead, the researchers found several small pits filled with water. The largest of them was named Southern Swamp. Kulik was sure that the remains of the cosmic visitor were hidden here, but all attempts to find meteorite fragments were in vain. Instead, the expedition discovered something else: strange spherical particles in the soil. Under a microscope, they looked like tiny glass balls with an unusual structure. The composition of these particles did not match any known meteorite. Some contained rare elements in proportions not found in nature. Even more intriguing were the findings of local residents. They told of strange metal pieces found in the taiga after the explosion. These fragments had unusual properties. They did not rust, did not melt in ordinary fire, and made strange sounds when struck. But when scientists asked to see these samples, it turned out that they had been lost or taken away by spirits. Were these the fabrications of superstitious people or real artifacts? The answer to this question is still unknown. Some researchers believe that local residents did indeed find debris of unknown origin, but hid it from scientists out of fear or for religious reasons. Kulik's expedition discovered other anomalies as well. Trees that grew after 1908 developed unusually quickly. Their annual rings were significantly wider than usual. This could indicate a change in soil composition or the influence of some unknown factor. But the most mysterious discovery was the stories of local residents about glowing nights. According to them, for several years after the explosion, a strange glow could sometimes be observed in the area of the disaster. It appeared for no apparent reason, had a bluish or greenish tint, and slowly moved between the trees. Kulik tried to find a scientific explanation for this phenomenon, but without success. Radioactivity had not yet been sufficiently studied at that time, and the expedition did not have the necessary equipment. The scientist only recorded this evidence, planning to return to study it later. Kulik's expeditions continued from 1927 to 1939. Each season brought new mysteries instead of the expected answers. The deeper the scientists delved into the study of the Tunguska event, the more questions arose, and the most important of them was, where was the meteorite? According to all scientific calculations, a cosmic body capable of causing such destruction should have left behind significant fragments. The minimum mass of such an object was estimated at tens of thousands of tons. Where did it all go? Complete evaporation seemed impossible. Even at the highest temperatures, some traces should have remained. Kulik put forward the hypothesis that the meteorite had broken up in the atmosphere into many small fragments that scattered over a huge area. This theory explained the absence of a single crater, but did not answer the question of why no significant fragments had been found. The search was conducted with incredible thoroughness. The expedition combed through the taiga square by square, sifted through the soil, and examined every suspicious find. Particles of extraterrestrial origin were found, but their quantity was negligible. Grams instead of the expected tons. The oddities multiplied. In the swamps of the disaster area, they discovered unusually high levels of nickel and iridium, elements characteristic of meteorites. But their distribution did not correspond to any known model of a space object's fall. It was as if someone had deliberately scattered these elements according to a specific pattern. Even more mysterious were the magnetic anomalies. Compasses in the epicenter area showed inaccurate directions. The magnetic field seemed to be distorted by some external influence. Such distortions could have been caused by iron ore deposits, but geological surveys did not confirm their presence. Local residents continued to tell strange stories. Reindeer herders claimed that their animals refused to graze in certain places. Hunters reported unusual behavior in animals. They seemed to avoid certain areas of the taiga. Even the vegetation in these areas grew in a peculiar way. Kulik recorded all this evidence, but could not explain it. The scientific methodology of those years did not allow for the study of such subtle phenomena. There was no appropriate equipment, and there was no theoretical basis for interpreting such anomalies. Reports of periodic light phenomena were particularly disturbing. Several times, the expedition members themselves observed strange flashes of light above the swamps. They appeared suddenly, varied in intensity and color, and then disappeared without a trace. No traces of burning or other obvious causes could be found. In 1932, an event occurred that made Kulik seriously think about the nature of the Tunguska phenomenon. While working on the South Swamp, one of the workers, Ivan Korolkov, noticed a strange metallic glint under the water. When he tried to retrieve the object, he received a strong electric shock, even though there were no sources of electricity nearby. Korolkov described the object he found as a piece of metal the size of a fist, covered with strange markings. But when they returned to the site the next day with the necessary equipment, the object was no longer there. The swamp was thoroughly searched, but no traces of the find were found. This case became one of many mysterious episodes in the history of the study of the Tunguska event. Disappearing artifacts, inexplicable phenomena, strange coincidences, all this created an atmosphere of mystical mystery around the Siberian catastrophe. By the end of the 1930s, Kulik was forced to admit that the classic meteorite theory did not explain all the facts that had been discovered. His diaries contain notes on possible alternative hypotheses. The scientist began to consider versions about comets, gas explosions in the atmosphere, and even the possible man-made origin of the catastrophe. The absence of a crater became the main mystery of the Tunguska event, which destroyed all the initial theories about the meteorite fall. According to the laws of physics, a celestial body of the size and mass necessary to cause such destruction should have pierced the Earth's surface and left a crater at least a kilometer in diameter and several hundred meters deep. But at the site of the supposed impact, researchers found only a few small, swampy depressions of natural origin. The largest of these, the southern swamp, had a diameter of only about 700 meters and a depth of no more than 4 meters. Geological analysis showed that these formations existed long before 1908. This anomaly forced scientists to reconsider their ideas about the nature of the catastrophe. If there was no impact with the ground, then the explosion occurred in the air. But what could have exploded in the atmosphere with such tremendous force? Ordinary meteorites heat up when they enter the atmosphere and can explode. But the energy of such explosions is orders of magnitude less than that observed in Tunguska. Soviet physicists put forward the hypothesis that a comet, a celestial body consisting of ice and cosmic dust, entered the Earth's atmosphere. When heated, the ice instantly turns into steam, creating a powerful explosion. This theory explained the absence of a crater and the lack of solid debris. However, the comet hypothesis faced a number of contradictions. Comets usually have elongated orbits and enter the atmosphere at small angles. The Tunguska object moved almost vertically. In addition, witnesses described the object as a dense, luminous body, not a blurred comet-like formation. The flight path of the Tunguska object became the subject of a separate study. Eyewitness accounts from different settlements made it possible to reconstruct the approximate path of the celestial body. It turned out that it flew from the southeast to the northwest, at an angle of about 30 degrees to the horizon. But here, a new surprise awaited the researchers. Analysis of the damage to the forest showed that the epicenter of the explosion did not coincide with the projection of the flight path. It was as if the object had changed direction at the last moment or exploded somewhere other than where it was supposed to fall. Such behavior is completely uncharacteristic of celestial bodies of natural origin. Studying the nature of the forest fall brought even more mysteries. The trees were felled strictly radially from the center of the explosion, which corresponded to a high-power air explosion. But in some places, this radial structure was disrupted. There were areas where trees lay in other directions, as if they had been knocked down by an additional shock wave. Particularly strange were the so-called standing forest zones. In several places, located at different distances from the epicenter, trees remained standing, although everything around them had been knocked down. These zones had a regular geometric shape, round or oval. It was impossible to explain their formation using known laws of physics. Another anomaly was the direction of the fallen trees at the epicenter itself. It would be logical to expect that in the center of the explosion, trees would be knocked down in all directions chaotically. but analysis showed that even at the epicenter, a certain directionality was preserved. It was as if the explosion was not a point explosion, but an extended one. Radioactivity measurements taken in the 1950s revealed another oddity. Elevated radiation levels were detected in the disaster area, but their distribution did not correspond to any known model. Radioactive elements were concentrated at certain points, creating a peculiar map of anomalies. Soviet scientists tried to explain these findings by natural causes. There were suggestions that the Tunguska body contained radioactive elements, or that the radiation was formed as a result of nuclear reactions during the explosion. But mathematical models did not confirm the possibility of such processes during the explosion of a cosmic body. By the 1960s, it became clear that standard explanations were unable to describe all the features of the Tunguska event. The accumulated facts required fundamentally new approaches and theories. It was during this period that alternative hypotheses began to appear, which official science preferred to ignore. One of the most alarming discoveries related to the Tunguska event was the detection of radioactive traces and genetic abnormalities in the disaster area. These findings only appeared in the 1950s, when Soviet science gained access to the appropriate equipment. What the researchers discovered did not fit into any existing theory of the natural origin of the explosion. The first measurements of background radiation were taken in 1956 by physicist Alexei Zolotov. His Geiger counter recorded several times the normal background radiation level. But the strangest thing was the distribution of radiation. It was concentrated not at the epicenter of the explosion, but at several distant points, forming a mysterious geometric figure. Isotopic analysis of the soil revealed the presence of elements that should not have been there. Traces of cesium-137, strontium-90, and other artificial radioisotopes were found in the samples. These elements are only formed during nuclear reactions. In 1908, humanity did not yet know about the existence of atomic energy. Biological studies yielded even more shocking results. Trees that grew after 1908 in the disaster zone showed unusually rapid growth. Their annual rings were 2 to 3 times larger than normal. Such accelerated development could only have been caused by exposure to ionizing radiation. Even more alarming were the genetic abnormalities in plants. Botanists discovered numerous mutations, trees with deformed trunks, unusual leaf shapes, and altered colors. The frequency of mutations in the Tunguska area was dozens of times higher than the natural level. Such changes are characteristic of plants exposed to powerful radiation. Insects in the disaster zone also showed genetic abnormalities. Entomologists found butterflies with deformed wings, beetles of unusual sizes, and ants with altered behavior. All these anomalies pointed to the mutagenic effect of an unknown factor. The findings in the swamps were particularly interesting. Microscopic spherical particles of unusual composition were found in peat deposits dating back to 1908. Spectral analysis showed the presence of rare earth elements in proportions not found in nature. Some of these particles were slightly radioactive. Medical studies of the local population revealed a statistically significant increase in the incidence of cancer among the descendants of eyewitnesses to the Tunguska event. Although this link has not been conclusively proven due to the small sample size, it has caused serious concern among experts. Soviet scientists tried to find a natural explanation for the radioactive anomalies. Hypotheses were put forward that the Tunguska body contained natural radioactive elements, or that the radiation was formed as a result of cosmic rays. But calculations showed that impossibly high concentrations of radioactive substances would be required to create the observed effects. Alternative explanations were even more fantastic. Some researchers suggested that a natural nuclear reaction had occurred in the Earth's atmosphere in 1908. Others hypothesized that an extraterrestrial spacecraft with a nuclear engine had exploded. Official science rejected such theories as unscientific. However, the facts remained. Radiation, genetic mutations, artificial isotopes, all of this required an explanation. Gradually, rumors began to spread in the scientific community that the Tunguska event could have been man-made. If so, the question arose: whose technology was capable of creating such an explosion in 1908? The results of radiological studies began to be classified in the late 1950s. Many reports on radiation anomalies were classified as top secret and disappeared from public access. Official publications began to be limited to general phrases about traces of cosmic matter, without mentioning specific isotopes and radiation levels. This secrecy gave rise to many conspiracy theories. If the research results did not pose a threat to national security, why were they hidden? What secret could data about an event that happened 50 years ago contain? The answers to these questions remain a mystery to this day. The testimonies of military pilots and law enforcement officials about the Tunguska event remained in the shadows for a long time. These testimonies were classified immediately after they were received and only became available to researchers in the 1990s. What the military said was radically different from the official version of the meteorite fall. The first aerial photographs of the disaster area were taken by Soviet pilots in the 1930s. Pilot Ivan Petrov, who was conducting a reconnaissance flight over the taiga in 1938, reported observing strange metal objects among the fallen trees. His report mentioned shiny fragments of regular geometric shape that could not be parts of a meteorite. During World War II, military aircraft flew over the Tunguska area on numerous occasions. Several pilots independently reported observing unusual light phenomena. In 1942, Captain Mikhail Orlov saw bright flashes of light rising from the ground to the sky. Such phenomena are not characteristic of natural processes in the taiga. Of particular interest are the statements of Colonel Anatoly Grigoriev, who in 1944 led a secret operation to search for a downed German aircraft in the Tunguska region. His group did not find the remains of an aircraft, but rather metal structures of unknown purpose, partially overgrown with moss. Attempts to extract these objects ended in failure due to their extraordinary strength. Grigoriev described the fragments found as parts of a complex technical system with microscopic precision of manufacture. According to him, the metal had unusual properties. It could not be cut with ordinary tools, did not react to acids, and exhibited strange behavior in a magnetic field. All the samples found were confiscated and sent to secret laboratories. In the 1950s, military aircraft began regular flights over the Tunguska region to monitor the radiation situation. Officially, these flights were explained as studying the effects of nuclear tests, but the real goals remained classified. Pilots were given strict instructions not to discuss what they saw, even with their colleagues. Major Vladimir Sokolov, who participated in such flights, later spoke of observing regular geometric shapes on the ground in the epicenter area. These formations were clearly visible from the air due to their difference from the surrounding vegetation. Sokolov described them as round and oval areas with altered vegetation color, arranged in a specific pattern. Even more mysterious were reports of moving objects. Several pilots independently reported encounters with unidentified flying objects in the Tunguska area. These objects demonstrated unusual flight characteristics, instant acceleration, sharp changes in flight direction, and the ability to hover motionless in the air. In 1957, Lieutenant Colonel Nikolai Kuznetsov encountered a metal disc with a diameter of about 20 meters that was moving silently over the forest. When he tried to approach it, the object instantly disappeared, leaving only a faint glow in the air. At that moment, radar stations recorded strong interference in their work. Military topographers working in the Tunguska area reported serious problems with navigation equipment. Compasses showed inaccurate directions, and radio communications were often interrupted by interference of unknown origin. In some places, electronic devices stopped working completely, as if they were exposed to a powerful electromagnetic field. Reports of inexplicable light phenomena caused particular concern among the military command. Guards at border posts repeatedly observed strange lights moving in the taiga. These lights appeared suddenly, moved in complex trajectories, and disappeared without a trace. Attempts at organized observation were unsuccessful. The lights seemed to avoid areas where people gathered. All of this evidence was immediately classified. Military personnel signed non-disclosure agreements about what they had seen. Many reports were given the highest level of secrecy and remain inaccessible to researchers to this day. It seemed that the military knew much more about the nature of the Tunguska phenomenon than it was willing to admit publicly. Secret Soviet research into the Tunguska phenomenon began much earlier than is generally accepted in official historiography. Already in the 1920s, parallel to Kulik's open expeditions, there was a closed program to study the event, codenamed Operation Taiga. Documents about this program have been only partially declassified and contain many omissions. The initiator of the secret research was Felix Dzerzhinsky, who in 1924 received a report on unusual findings in the Siberian taiga. Chekists who were secretly observing Kulik's expedition reported strange artifacts that scientists preferred not to mention in official reports. Dzerzhinsky ordered the creation of a special group to study the possible military application of the discovered phenomena. Gleb Boki, one of Dzerzhinsky's closest associates, was appointed head of the secret program. A group of scientists, engineers, and special services specialists worked under his leadership. Officially, they were listed as employees of various scientific institutes, but in fact, they reported only to the state security agencies. The program's budget was virtually unlimited. The first results of the secret research appeared in 1928. A classified report mentioned samples of metals of unknown composition and technical devices of unknown purpose. Analysis showed that these materials had properties that significantly exceeded anything known to modern science. Particular attention was drawn to fragments that demonstrated a shape memory effect. When heated, the deformed pieces of metal spontaneously returned to their original shape. Such technologies did not appear in open science until the 1970s. Where could materials with such properties have come from in 1928? Even more mysterious were the micromechanisms, tiny devices the size of a pinhead found in the soil of the disaster area. Under a microscope, they appeared to be complex technical structures with many moving parts. The principle of their operation remained unclear, but periodically they showed signs of activity. They began to rotate or emit a faint light. In the 1930s, Operation Taiga was placed under special secrecy. All participants in the program were relocated to a closed scientific town built specifically for this research. Contact with the outside world was kept to a minimum. Even the scientists' families did not know exactly what their loved ones were doing. A breakthrough in research occurred in 1937 when one of the found mechanisms was partially restored. The device was a source of energy of an unknown type, capable of operating without visible fuel for several months. The power generated was hundreds of times greater than that of the best batteries of the time. Attempts to create a copy of the device were unsuccessful. Soviet engineers did not have the technology necessary to manufacture components with the required precision. The principle of operation remained a mystery. No known physical processes could explain the observed effects. The war interrupted the research. Many scientists were evacuated, and some of the equipment and samples were lost. After the victory, the program was resumed under new leadership, but the initial momentum was lost. By this time, priorities had shifted towards the atomic project. In the 1950s, the study of the Tunguska artifacts was transferred to the specially created Research Institute 88. This institute was officially engaged in research into non-traditional energy sources, but the real focus of its work remained strictly classified. The Institute's employees studied not only the Tunguska finds, but also other anomalous phenomena on the territory of the USSR. The institute was headed by academician Sergei Korolev, the future chief designer of the Soviet space program. According to some sources, it was his research into Tunguska technologies that gave him ideas that were later used in the creation of rocket technology. Perhaps the secret of the success of Soviet cosmonautics lies partly in the study of artifacts of unknown origin. The latest documents on Operation Taiga date back to 1964. After that, all traces of the program are lost. Perhaps the research was curtailed, or perhaps it was transferred to an even higher level of secrecy. The fate of the artifacts found remains unknown. The hypothesis of an alien spacecraft crash in the Tunguska region was put forward in the 1950s by science fiction writer Alexander Kazantsev. However, what was considered literary fantasy in official science found more and more supporters among serious researchers. The facts accumulated by that time did not fit well into the framework of natural explanations. Kazantsev drew attention to the similarity between the destruction in Tunguska and the aftermath of the atomic explosion in Hiroshima. The radial nature of the forest clearing, the telegraph poles at the epicenter, and the accelerated growth of plants after the disaster all resembled the effects of a nuclear explosion. But in 1908, atomic weapons did not exist. The only explanation could be technology of extraterrestrial origin. The flight path of the Tunguska object also raised questions. Witnesses described strange maneuvers of the celestial body, slowing down, changing direction, even stopping in the air. Such behavior is completely uncharacteristic of meteorites or comets, but it is quite understandable for a controlled aircraft whose pilot was trying to prevent a disaster or find a suitable place for an emergency landing. Particularly interesting in the context of the extraterrestrial hypothesis were the Evank's testimonies about the fireman. In their stories, the space visitor descended from the sky and was bigger than a forest and brighter than the sun. Modern researchers have noted that similar descriptions are found in the folklore of many peoples around the world when describing encounters with celestial beings. Analysis of the damage to vegetation revealed another oddity. Trees in certain areas were burned unevenly, selectively, as if they had been exposed to directed radiation. This type of damage could indicate the use of unknown types of energy weapons or propulsion systems. The discovery of metal fragments with unusual properties also fit the extraterrestrial version. The materials demonstrated characteristics that significantly surpassed not only the technology of 1908, but also the current level of development. Particularly striking was the microscopic precision of the parts, which was unattainable for the industry of the early 20th century. Soviet astrophysicist Felix Ziegel conducted a detailed analysis of all available data on the Tunguska event in the 1960s. His conclusions were sensational. According to the scientist's calculations, an object weighing about 30,000 tons should have left a crater at least 200 meters deep. The absence of such a crater could only mean one thing. The explosion did not occur upon impact with the ground, but as a result of the detonation of fuel or explosives inside the device. Ziegel also drew attention to the unusual configuration of the destruction zone. It was not circular, as would be expected from a point explosion, but rather an elongated ellipse. Such a shape could have been formed by the explosion of an elongated object, such as a cylindrical spacecraft several kilometers long. The flight trajectory calculations seemed particularly convincing. Assuming that the object was attempting a controlled landing, all the maneuvers observed could be logically explained. The ship descended in a spiral, slowing down and selecting a suitable landing site. The disaster occurred at the last moment when something malfunctioned in the propulsion system. The stories of local residents about the events preceding the explosion were also intriguing. A few days before the crash, people observed strange lights in the sky that slowly moved between the stars. These lights appeared every night, gradually approaching the site of the future explosion. Perhaps it was a reconnaissance mission before the main expedition. Another argument in favor of the extraterrestrial version was the numerous anomalies observed in the disaster area in subsequent years. Strange light phenomena, electromagnetic interference, unexplained sounds. All this could indicate that active fragments of extraterrestrial technology remained in the taiga. Opponents of the extraterrestrial hypothesis pointed to the lack of direct evidence, remains of the ship, alien bodies, or unambiguously extraterrestrial materials. However, supporters of the theory argued that most of the evidence could have been destroyed in an explosion of such power. In addition, it could not be ruled out that the most important finds had been seized and classified by the military or special services. The version that the alien spacecraft did not explode accidentally, but was destroyed intentionally, appeared in the 1970s. According to this theory, the ship's crew sacrificed themselves to prevent the craft from crashing in a populated area. The choice of a deserted taiga as the crash site could have been a conscious decision by intelligent beings concerned for the safety of Earthlings. This noble version found support among researchers who studied numerous reports of UFO sightings in the 20th century. Many cases demonstrated that unidentified objects avoid harming people even when their actions appear hostile. Perhaps the Tunguska event was the first documented case of such altruistic behavior by extraterrestrial civilizations. One of the most exciting alternative theories was the hypothesis that the Tunguska event was linked to Nikola Tesla's secret experiments. This outstanding inventor worked on projects for long-distance energy transmission and the creation of a doomsday weapon in the early 20th century. The coincidence of the timing of his experiments with the date of the Tunguska catastrophe has given rise to many conspiracy theories. Tesla did indeed conduct work on wireless energy transmission in his laboratory in Colorado Springs from 1899 to 1901. He later moved to New York, where he continued his experiments on Long Island. His Wardenclyffe installation was capable of generating powerful electrical discharges and, according to the inventor himself, could transmit energy to any point on the planet. A key date in this theory is June 30th, 1908, the day of the Tunguska explosion. It was at this time that Tesla was testing his wireless energy transmission system. According to some sources, he planned to demonstrate the capabilities of his invention by transmitting a powerful energy pulse to the opposite side of the globe. The principle of Tesla's system was based on the resonant oscillations of the Earth's ionosphere. The inventor believed that the upper layers of the atmosphere could be used as a conductor for transmitting electrical energy. Powerful pulses generated by the transmitter were to propagate along the ionosphere and focus at a given reception point. Calculations show that when transmitting energy from the American continent to Siberia, the most likely focal point would be the Podkamennaya Tunguska region. This territory is located exactly on the opposite side of the globe from New York, which was ideal for experiments in transmitting energy through the Earth's crust. The theory received unexpected confirmation in the archives. A mysterious entry was found in Tesla's diary for the year 1908. The experiment was successful. The energy reached its target. The effect exceeded expectations. The power calculations need to be revised. The entry is dated July 1st, 1908, one day after the Tunguska event. Tesla's work on military applications of his inventions proved particularly intriguing. In 1907, he applied for a patent for a method and apparatus for transmitting electrical energy through the natural medium. The description of the invention mentioned the possibility of creating destructive effects at a distance without the use of projectiles. Modern researchers of Tesla's work have found references to death rays and doomsday weapons in his notes. The inventor claimed that his system was capable of destroying an entire army or a city from a distance of thousands of kilometers. For a long time, these statements were considered the fantasies of a brilliant but eccentric scientist. However, modern physics confirms the theoretical possibility of creating such a weapon. High-power directed microwave radiation is indeed capable of causing explosions in the atmosphere through the ionization of gases. With sufficient power, such an explosion could mimic the fall of a large meteorite. Tesla's theory is indirectly confirmed by the strange behavior of the Earth's magnetic field on the day of the Tunguska event. Magnetometers around the world recorded unusual disturbances that began several hours before the explosion and continued for another day after it. Such disturbances are characteristic of powerful electromagnetic pulses of artificial origin. The atmospheric effects observed after the Tunguska explosion also correspond to the effects of powerful electromagnetic radiation. Silver clouds, unusual sky glow, and auroras at low latitudes. All these phenomena could have been caused by the ionization of the upper atmosphere by high-frequency radiation. The termination of Tesla's experiments immediately after 1908 also gives pause for thought. The Wardenclyffe project was shut down despite its promising prospects. Funding was cut off, and the equipment was dismantled. Officially, this was explained by economic reasons, but it is possible that the inventor himself was frightened by the power of his creation. In the last years of his life, Tesla repeatedly claimed that he possessed the secret of a weapon capable of ending all wars. He claimed that he could destroy an enemy fleet or army from a distance of 300 kilometers. These statements attracted the interest of military departments in various countries, but the inventor refused to reveal the details of his discovery. Tesla's death in 1943 is shrouded in mystery. His laboratory was immediately sealed off by FBI agents, and all documents and equipment were confiscated. Officially, this was explained by national security considerations. In the midst of war, any military inventions were of strategic value, but it is possible that the special services were looking for documents related to the Tunguska experiment. The mysterious metal fragments found in the area of the Tunguska catastrophe are one of the most intriguing mysteries of this event. For decades, researchers have found samples of materials in the taiga that do not correspond to any earthly or known cosmic analogs. These findings are carefully hidden from the public and studied in secret laboratories. The first reports of unusual metal pieces appeared as early as the 1920s. Local residents told of heavenly iron found in the taiga after the explosion. This metal had amazing properties. It did not rust even in the humid climate of Siberia, did not melt in ordinary fire, and emitted strange musical sounds when struck. In 1928, geologist Pyotr Dravert was the first to conduct a scientific analysis of such samples. His research showed that the metal contained elements in proportions not found in nature. The concentration of rare earth metals, yttrium, lanthanum, and neodymium, was particularly high. This composition is not characteristic of either terrestrial ores or known types of meteorites. More detailed research was conducted by an expedition of the USSR Academy of Sciences in 1958, led by geochemist Kirill Florensky. Scientists discovered microscopic spherical particles of unusual composition in the soil of the disaster area. These space balls contained nickel, cobalt, and iron, but their isotopic composition was radically different from that of Earth. Particles containing isotopes that do not occur in a stable state in nature attracted particular attention. Such isotopes can only be formed as a result of nuclear reactions or in the depths of stars. Their presence in the Tunguska samples indicated either the cosmic origin of the material or the influence of unknown technological processes. Even more mysterious were the findings of the 1961 expedition. Metal fragments ranging in size from a few millimeters to several centimeters were found in the marshy sediments. Under an electron microscope, they appeared to be complex crystalline structures with regular geometry. The most striking property of these fragments was their ability to self-organize. Under certain conditions, elevated temperature or a magnetic field, individual pieces began to attract each other, forming more complex structures. Such behavior of matter is not described by modern solid-state physics. Chemical analysis revealed the presence of elements that were officially discovered only in the second half of the 20th century. In particular, traces of technetium were found, an artificial element that does not exist in nature and can only be obtained in nuclear reactors. How it got into the samples from 1908 remains a mystery. Attempts to determine the age of the metal fragments yielded contradictory results. Radiocarbon analysis showed an age of several thousand years, which contradicted the circumstances of their discovery. Other dating methods gave completely different figures, from several tens to millions of years. Particularly interesting were fragments with clear signs of artificial origin. Under high magnification, traces of mechanical processing could be seen on their surface: straight lines, round holes, threaded connections. The precision of these parts exceeded the capabilities of early 20th century industry. Some samples showed signs of programmable behavior. When heated to a certain temperature, they began to emit a faint light or high-frequency sounds. It seemed as if the metal contained some kind of information that was activated under certain conditions. The physical properties of the Tunguska metals also went beyond what was known. The strength of some samples exceeded that of the best modern alloys by tens of times. At the same time, the material retained its plasticity and ability to deform without breaking. Such a combination of properties is unattainable for Earth technologies. Studies of magnetic properties revealed another anomaly. The fragments demonstrated variable magnetic permeability, which changed depending on external conditions. In some cases, the material became diamagnetic, repelling magnets, which is completely uncharacteristic of metals with a high iron content. All attempts to synthesize similar materials in laboratory conditions were unsuccessful. Even knowing the exact chemical composition, scientists were unable to reproduce the unique crystal structure and physical properties of the Tunguska samples. This indicated the use of unknown technological processes in their manufacture. The fate of most of the fragments found remains unknown. The most interesting samples were transferred to specialized institutes and disappeared from the field of open science. Perhaps the study of these materials continues in classified laboratories, and the results of the research are used for the development of military technologies. Classified documents of the special services related to the Tunguska event are one of the most closely guarded state secrets. For over a century, various intelligence organizations have been gathering information about this disaster, but the vast majority of the materials remain inaccessible to researchers. The little that has leaked into open sources paints a picture of a large-scale international cover-up of the truth. The first secret documents appeared as early as 1909, when the Tsarist secret police received information about an unusual incident in Siberia. The agent's report mentioned foreign intelligence agents who were showing increased interest in the U disaster area. This indicates that foreign intelligence services knew more about the event than was reported in the official press. German intelligence showed particular interest in Tunguska. Maps of the disaster area with detailed notes in German were found in archives captured after World War I. German agents not only knew the exact coordinates of the epicenter of the explosion, but also had information about the nature of the destruction that was not published in the open press. After the Revolution of 1917, the study of the Tunguska event came under the control of the Cheka. As early as 1919, a special task force codenamed Meteor was created. Officially, it was engaged in studying the consequences of natural disasters for the purposes of state security. But its real tasks were much broader. The Meteor Group coordinated the activities of various agencies, from scientific expeditions to military intelligence. It had significant resources at its disposal, including specially trained agent scientists. These people infiltrated scientific expeditions under the guise of researchers, but in fact collected intelligence. One of the most secret areas of work was the study of evidence from the local population. Chekists methodically interviewed all residents of the area, recorded their stories, and drew up detailed maps. Particular attention was paid to reports of strange finds, metal objects, unusual stones, and glowing objects. In the 1930s, the NKVD joined the study of Tunguska. An even more secret structure was created, Laboratory 7, which was engaged in the study of anomalous phenomena. The laboratory was headed by Gleb Boki, one of Dzerzhinsky's closest associates, known for his esoteric interests. Laboratory 7 had its own network of agents throughout the Soviet Union. They were engaged in the search for and study of various anomalous phenomena, from UFOs to poltergeists. The Tunguska event was considered a benchmark case for the development of a methodology for studying such phenomena. Particular importance was attached to the international aspect of the problem. Soviet intelligence monitored the activities of foreign researchers studying the Tunguska event. It turned out that many Western scientists had ties to the military departments of their countries. This indicated military interest in Tunguska technologies. American intelligence was also active in this area. Declassified CIA documents mention Project Blue Book, a program to study UFOs that included analysis of historical cases. The Tunguska event was seen as a possible example of early contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. The British MI6 also had its own program for studying anomalous phenomena. In the 1970s, documents were declassified about the Unexplained Phenomena Research Group, which had been operating since the 1950s. Tunguska was on the list of priority objects for study. The international nature of interest in Tunguska became particularly evident in the post-war period. It was established that scientists from different countries exchanged information about their research, but did so through closed channels. Officially, such cooperation did not exist, which indicated coordination at the level of the special services. Attempts to gain access to classified materials were made repeatedly, but without success. Even after the collapse of the USSR and the proclamation of a policy of openness, most documents on Tunguska remained inaccessible. References to state secrets and national security are still used today. The few documents that have been declassified contain numerous redactions and corrections. The most interesting parts have been blacked out or cut out. It seems that even partial disclosure of information is carefully controlled and rationed. Materials related to findings in the disaster area are particularly carefully concealed. All references to metal fragments, unusual soil samples, and anomalous measurements are removed from declassified documents. This indicates that physical evidence of the Tunguska event is still of interest to the military and special services. The international conspiracy of silence surrounding the Tunguska event is one of the most compelling arguments in favor of the theory that the true nature of the disaster is being concealed. The coordinated actions of various governments, the mutual concealment of key facts, and the synchronized classification of documents all point to the existence of an unspoken agreement to hide the truth from the public. The first signs of international coordination appeared as early as the 1920s, when foreign scientific journals practically stopped publishing materials about the Tunguska event. Until that moment, the Western press had shown keen interest in the Siberian mystery, but suddenly, the topic disappeared from the field of vision of the international scientific community. An analysis of the archives shows that between 1925 and 1930, there was a sharp decline in publications about Tunguska in American and European publications. At the same time, censorship of Soviet materials translated into foreign languages intensified. Such synchronicity cannot be coincidental. The fate of the international expedition planned in 1929 was particularly telling. Scientists from the US, UK, Germany, and France were to investigate the disaster area together with their Soviet colleagues. The project received preliminary approval from all interested parties, but was cancelled at the last minute without explanation. Officially, the cancellation was explained by technical difficulties and changes in the political situation. However, private correspondence between the project participants suggests that the real reason was the intervention of government structures. Scientists were advised to focus on other areas of research. During World War II, an event occurred that shed light on the international nature of interest in Tunguska. In 1942, German troops attempted to capture the disaster area. Officially, this was explained by strategic objectives for the advance on Siberia. But analysis of the documents paints a different picture. A special SS unit called anomalies was given a secret mission to find and seize artifacts of special significance in the Podkamennaya Tunguska area. This unit was engaged in the search for occult and technical knowledge that could strengthen the military power of the Reich. The fact that the Nazis considered the Tunguska findings to be strategically important speaks volumes. After the war, as part of Operation Paperclip, American intelligence agencies took not only rocket scientists out of Germany, but also specialists in unconventional research. Among them were people who had studied the anomalies materials on Tunguska. This knowledge became the basis for American programs to study anomalous phenomena. In the 1950s, a new phase of international cooperation on the Tunguska question began. Formally, there was Cold War tension between the USSR and the US, but there was covert cooperation in the field of anomalous phenomena research. Information was exchanged through closed channels via scientific institutions with ties to the special services. The creation of NASA in 1958 led to increased American interest in Tunguska. As part of a program to study space threats, American scientists gained access to some Soviet materials about the disaster. In return, the USSR received data from American studies of UFOs and other anomalous phenomena. Scientific organizations, formerly independent of governments, played a special role in the international conspiracy of silence. The International Astronomical Union, the International Academy of Astronautics, and the World Meteorological Organization all coordinated a policy of silence on the Tunguska issue. At international scientific conferences, there was an unspoken ban on discussing alternative versions of the Tunguska event. Reports containing references to the possible artificial origin of the catastrophe were rejected by the organizing committees. Scientists who violated this ban were subjected to professional discrimination. A telling example is the story of French astrophysicist Pierre Lagrange, who in 1974 presented a report on electromagnetic anomalies of the Tunguska event at an international conference. The report was removed from the program at the last minute, and Lagrange himself lost funding for his research. The creation of the Internet and the development of information technology created new threats to maintaining the conspiracy of silence. Independent researchers were able to exchange information, bypassing official channels. In response, a large-scale campaign was launched to discredit alternative versions. So-called mythbusters and fighters against pseudoscience received powerful support in the media. Their task was to shape public opinion that any versions other than the official meteorite theory were conspiracy delusions and pseudo-scientific fantasies. At the same time, internet censorship intensified. Search engines began to lower the ratings of websites containing alternative information about Tunguska. Social networks began to block the accounts of researchers who published sensational materials. All of this was coordinated at the international level. Modern technologies have made it possible to perfect the information control system. Artificial intelligence automatically tracks publications about Tunguska and generates reports for the relevant authorities. Any attempt to disseminate undesirable information is immediately suppressed. Modern research into the Tunguska event, conducted using the advanced technologies of the 21st century, has yielded a number of sensational discoveries that cast doubt on all previous theories. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and new-generation isotope analysis have all revealed anomalies that cannot be explained by traditional science. The first revolutionary results were obtained in 1997, when Russian scientists conducted detailed aerial photography of the disaster area using modern equipment. The images clearly showed geometric structures that were invisible from the ground. These formations were regular in shape and clearly artificial in origin. Particularly intriguing were the circular and oval areas in which the vegetation differed from the surrounding area in both composition and growth rate. These biological anomalies were arranged in a specific pattern, forming a complex geometric pattern. Such orderliness could not have been the result of a random natural process. A georadar survey conducted in the early 2000s revealed structures underground that looked like the remains of man-made structures. At a depth of 10 to 20 meters, objects of regular geometric shape were discovered, consisting of material with abnormal density. Attempts to extract these objects to the surface encountered technical difficulties. Drilling showed that the structures were made of extremely durable material that could not be destroyed by conventional methods. In addition, electronic devices began to malfunction when approaching the objects. Isotopic analysis of soil samples, conducted using modern mass spectrometers, confirmed the presence of elements of extraterrestrial origin. Several isotopes were discovered that do not occur naturally and can only be obtained artificially in nuclear reactors or particle accelerators. Particularly noteworthy was the discovery of isotopes of elements that had been theoretically predicted by physicists but had never been synthesized in terrestrial laboratories. Their presence in the Tunguska samples indicated the use of technologies far beyond the current level of scientific development. Biological studies revealed genetic abnormalities in plants growing in the disaster area. DNA analysis showed the presence of sequences that are not found in any known terrestrial organisms. These foreign genes could only have entered the plants as a result of external factors. Even more surprising were the results of studies of microorganisms from Tunguska soils. Bacteria with unique properties were discovered. They could exist in conditions of increased radiation, extreme temperatures, and complete absence of oxygen. Such organisms should not have evolved under terrestrial conditions. Modern radiological studies using highly sensitive equipment have revealed a complex structure of radiation anomalies in the disaster area. The distribution of radioactive elements formed a three-dimensional pattern that cannot be explained by natural processes of contamination spread. Computer modeling showed that such a distribution of radiation could only have been formed as a result of a directed impact. For example, during the operation of jet engines of an unknown type, or during the explosion of devices using principles unknown to modern physics. The researchers were particularly interested in the magnetic anomalies detected by modern magnetometers. In the area of the disaster, the Earth's magnetic field is distorted in a way that cannot be explained by iron ore deposits or other geological factors. A three-dimensional map of magnetic anomalies showed that the distortions have a complex structure and form peculiar magnetic lenses. Such formations could theoretically be created by powerful electromagnetic fields of artificial origin, but their generation would require technologies that are not available to modern civilization. Seismological studies using modern equipment have revealed structures beneath the disaster area that do not correspond to the natural structure of the Earth's crust. At a depth of several kilometers, regular-shaped cavities have been discovered that could only have been created artificially. Acoustic studies have shown that these underground structures have unusual resonant properties. Under certain conditions, they can amplify and focus sound waves, creating effects that local residents describe as voices from underground. All this modern data paints a picture that is radically different from the official version of the pre-meteorite fall. The accumulated facts indicate that the Tunguska region contains the remains of highly advanced technology of unknown origin. The only question is whether official science is ready to acknowledge this reality. The connection between the Tunguska event and other anomalous phenomena that occurred in the 20th century is one of the most intriguing mysteries of modern ufology. A detailed analysis of the chronology shows that the Tunguska catastrophe was not an isolated incident, but the first link in a chain of inexplicable events that continue to this day. Just a few years after Tunguska, reports began to come in about strange objects being observed in various regions of the world. In 1913, residents of Canada reported a fireball falling in the Great Lakes region. The nature of the destruction and the absence of a crater were strikingly similar to the Tunguska picture. Observations of anomalous phenomena became particularly intense between the two world wars. Civil aviation pilots regularly reported encounters with unidentified flying objects. These craft demonstrated flight characteristics that were unattainable for the aviation of that time. During World War II, the number of sightings increased dramatically. Military pilots from all sides of the war reported encounters with mysterious fireballs that accompanied their aircraft. These objects were named Foo Fighters and became the subject of secret investigations by intelligence services. The incident in Roswell in 1947 was particularly significant. Officially, it was explained as the crash of a secret military balloon, but numerous witnesses claimed to have seen the remains of a craft that was clearly not of earthly origin. The nature of the debris and attempts to conceal it were strikingly similar to the situation with the Tunguska finds. An analysis of military archives shows that all the major powers in the post-war period created special units to study UFOs. The American Project Blue Book, the Soviet Network AN, and the British Flying Saucer Working Group all coordinated their actions and exchanged information. It is noteworthy that many UFO researchers showed particular interest in the Tunguska event. They considered it a possible precedent for modern observations. Some hypothesized that the first documented contact with an extraterrestrial civilization occurred in 1908. Geographical analysis of UFO sightings revealed an interesting pattern. Many hot spots of unidentified object activity were located in regions geologically similar to the Tunguska area. This could indicate that certain types of terrain attract the attention of unknown forces. Sightings were particularly active in areas with elevated radiation levels. Nuclear test sites, nuclear power plants, and radioactive waste storage facilities were all regularly visited by unidentified objects. It seemed that they were interested in our nuclear technologies. The temporal correlation also proved to be significant. Peaks in UFO activity often coincided with important events in the development of Earth's science and technology. The first nuclear explosions, spacecraft launches, and tests of new types of weapons, all these milestones were accompanied by an increase in the number of sightings of anomalous objects. The technological parallels between the Tunguska event and modern UFO sightings are also noteworthy. Witnesses often describe effects strikingly similar to those observed in Siberia in 1908. Dazzling flashes of light, electromagnetic interference, and effects on vegetation. A telling example was the incident in Rendlesham Forest in the UK in 1980. Servicemen from an American airbase observed an unidentified object landing in the forest. Traces of radiation, damage to trees, and strange metal fragments were found at the site of the alleged landing. The biological effects also show similarities with the Tunguska anomalies. In places where UFOs are observed, accelerated plant growth, genetic mutations, and changes in animal behavior are often recorded. These phenomena indicate the influence of unknown physical factors. Psychological effects are of particular interest. Witnesses to UFO encounters often report changes in their perception of time, the appearance of unusual knowledge, and prophetic dreams. Similar phenomena were described by some eyewitnesses to the Tunguska event years after the disaster. Modern researchers hypothesize that Earth has been under observation by an extraterrestrial civilization for a long time. The Tunguska event may not have been a catastrophe, but rather a deliberate demonstration of power, a warning to humanity about the consequences of the irrational use of energy. An alternative version suggests that all anomalous phenomena of the 20th century are associated with the activities of secret earthly organizations that possess technologies significantly superior to the official level of scientific development. In this case, Tunguska could have been the result of testing a top-secret weapon. What are the authorities of all countries ultimately hiding from humanity by maintaining a conspiracy of silence around the Tunguska event? Analysis of all available facts, evidence, and circumstantial data allows us to draw shocking conclusions about the true nature of the 1908 disaster and its significance for the future of our civilization. The most likely version is that an extraterrestrial spacecraft did indeed crash in the Podkamennaya-Tunguska region. All the physical data, the nature of the destruction, the absence of a crater, radiation anomalies, unusual materials, point to this possibility. But if this is the case, why has the truth been hidden for over a century? The answer lies in the revolutionary nature of the technologies that could have been discovered in the wreckage of the alien spacecraft. Analysis of the fragments found shows that extraterrestrial civilizations possess principles of controlling energy, matter, and space that are thousands of years ahead of Earth's level of development. Mastering these technologies would give any country absolute military superiority over the rest of the world. Weapons based on new physical principles, inexhaustible energy sources, revolutionary transportation systems, all of this would radically change the balance of power on the planet and could lead to the establishment of world domination. That is why the leading powers have entered into a tacit agreement to jointly study the Tunguska artifacts and conceal the results from the public. The creation of an international consortium to study extraterrestrial technologies has made it possible to avoid a catastrophic arms race and maintain relative stability in the world order. Indirect confirmation of this version is provided by the synchronism of technological breakthroughs in different countries during the 20th century. Jet aviation, rocket technology, nuclear energy, lasers, computers. All these revolutionary inventions appeared almost simultaneously in the USSR, the USA, and other developed countries. Such synchronicity is impossible with independent scientific development. It becomes understandable if we assume that all the leading powers had access to a single source of advanced knowledge: technologies extracted from the wreckage of the Tunguska ship. The measured introduction of these technologies ensured controlled progress without upsetting the balance of power. Emigrant scientists who moved from country to country, carrying secret knowledge with them, played a special role in this process. Tsiolkovsky, Tesla, Einstein, Werner von Braun, all these outstanding minds may have been not just brilliant inventors, but conduits of extraterrestrial technologies into Earth science. The creation of the UN in 1945 can also be viewed in the context of the Tunguska mystery. This organization became a cover for coordinating international cooperation in the study of extraterrestrial technologies. Many specialized UN agencies are actually involved in controlling the dissemination of knowledge obtained from non-earthly sources. The space programs of the leading powers also take on new meaning in light of the Tunguska version. Officially, they are aimed at exploring space, but the real goal may be to search for other artifacts of extraterrestrial civilizations. The Moon, Mars, asteroids. All of these objects may contain technological treasures left behind by ancient space travelers. Contemporary conflicts and geopolitical processes may also be linked to the struggle for control over extraterrestrial technologies. Wars in regions with increased UFO activity, the creation of military bases in strategically important locations, and international tensions surrounding peaceful space programs may all be manifestations of a hidden struggle for extraterrestrial heritage. Contemporary environmental problems also take on new meaning in the context of the Tunguska mystery. Perhaps extraterrestrial technologies hold the solutions to humanity's energy and environmental problems, but their implementation is being blocked in order to preserve the existing world order. An alternative version suggests that the Tunguska event was not a catastrophe, but a deliberate transfer of technology to a developing Earth civilization. Extraterrestrial intelligence may have considered humanity ready to receive new knowledge and organized a technological gift in the form of debris from a deliberately destroyed ship. In this case, the conspiracy of silence is aimed at concealing the fact of contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The religious, philosophical, and social consequences of such a discovery could lead to the collapse of existing civilization. Therefore, knowledge is introduced gradually within the framework of natural scientific progress. The third version links the Tunguska event with the activities of secret earthly organizations that possess technologies of unknown origin. These groups may represent the remnants of ancient civilizations or secret societies that have preserved forbidden knowledge. Tunguska could have been a testing ground for their super technologies. Regardless of the true nature of the Tunguska phenomenon, its concealment serves the interests of the global elite, who seek to maintain control over humanity. Revolutionary technologies in the hands of all people would lead to the decentralization of power and the impossibility of controlling the masses. Therefore, the mystery of Tunguska will be guarded until the very nature of human society changes.